A glance at Imam Khomeini's life.
Sayyid Ruhollah Khomeini, leader of the Islamic Revolution and founder of the Islamic Republic of Iran, was born on September 23, 1902, to a religious family in Khomein in central Iran. When he was 5 months old, his father, Sayyid Mustafa, was martyred, and his mother took care of him until he became a youngster. He was also reared by his pious paternal aunt. He lost his mother when he was 15. The same year, he began learning Persian literature and taking courses in theology from his older brother, Morteza Pasandide, and some other masters in these fields. He went to the Arak Seminary School in 1919 and left there for Qom 3 years later.
Qom was famous for its seminary school, and there he achieved great success in his study of theology, and was educated in the advanced levels of theology by prominent masters. His main educators included Sheikh Abdolkarim Haeri Yazdi in Islamic jurisprudence and theology, Sheikh Ali Akbar Yazdi in astronomy, and Sheikh Mohammad Ali Shahabadi in mysticism. Imam Khomeini married at 27 when he was one of the leading educators at the Qom Seminary School. During the years he was studying and teaching, specific important developments took place in Iran and the world. These events included the fall of the Qajar dynasty, the rise to power of Reza Khan and the Pahlavi regime, the outbreak of World War II and the subsequent presence of foreign military forces in Iran, forcible prohibition of the wearing of the veil and the Islamic dress code, the late Modarres's struggle against Reza Khan, severe suppression of the clergy and religious manifestations in Iran, the visible rise of Marxism, the fall of Reza Khan, and the stormy years following September 1941, and the oil nationalization movement led by Ayatollah Kashani and Dr. Mossadegh. The experiences gained through all these developments helped Imam Khomeini during the period he led the struggle against the Shah's regime. The most salient event which marked the beginning of Imam Khomeini's leadership was the bloody uprising of June 5, 1963, that was harshly suppressed by the Shah's regime. 1 year later, Imam Khomeini was sent into exile in Bursa, Turkey, following which he voiced his opposition to the granting of legal immunity to all U.S. military advisors in Iran, known as the capitulation issue. He remained in Turkey just 1 year and then migrated to Najaf, Ashraf, Iraq.
His 13-year residence in Najaf is considered one of the most important periods of his life. During these years, he taught theology at the highest levels and trained many great and knowledgeable pupils who later assumed their place in the Iranian nation's struggle against the Shah's regime. At the same time, he was paying careful attention to socio-political developments occurring in Iran.
One of his sons, Sayyid Mustafa Khomeini, was martyred on October 22, 1977. His martyrdom was the starting point in the continuous protest movement against the regime, which eventually led to its downfall. During the months from October 1977 to February 10, 1979, pressure from the Iraqi government forced Imam Khomeini to leave for Kuwait. After he was prevented from entering Kuwait in October 1978, he headed to Paris. From Paris, he led the great Iranian national revolution. Finally, he returned to Iran, his homeland, on January 31, 1979, to an emotional and earnest welcome from the people. 10 days later, on February 10, 1979, after the collapse of the ruling regime, he established the Islamic Republic of Iran by the people's vote. During his leadership, which lasted 10 years and 4 months, he guided the Iranian people through many formidable events, such as the 8-year imposed war with Iraq. Imam Khomeini died on June 3, 1989, at the age of 87, at the height of his popularity.
Political life of Imam Khomeini.
Two groups of people have always influenced the political arena: spectators and those who play a role in this arena. Imam Khomeini was not only an astute observer and thoughtful analyst, but he was also one of the most important political figures of the 20th century. When he was a child, his father was martyred by local tribal chiefs, and he observed the battle between truth-seeking men and agents of the tribal chiefs. Of these times, he said,
Maybe none of you remember this kind of disorder, but when we were children, we experienced these events in our hometown. When I was a child, I had a gun and I could shoot.
The most important political events which affected the Imam began from the eclipse of the Qajar dynasty and the beginning of Reza Khan's reign. These included the consolidation of Reza Khan's power and the beginning of the Pahlavi regime, disputes among the members of the National Parliament, suppression of the clergy and religious institutions, Ayatollah Modarres's campaign against the regime, prohibition of the Islamic dress code, severe isolation of the clergy and their withdrawal from political activities, the advent of World War II and the presence of Allied forces in Iran, and the downfall of Reza Khan and the subsequent happiness of the Iranian people. Other events through which Imam Khomeini also gained valuable and important experience included the formation of different parties and growth of materialistic currents, the rise of liberation and nationalist movements in third world countries, Ayatollah Kashani and Dr. Mossadegh's uprising, and the nationalization of Iran's oil industry, America's coup d'etat in Iran of August 18, 1953, and the ensuing oppressive years. Some of Imam's opinions about these events can be viewed through his statements. About the parliament under Reza Khan, he suggested,
Whatever they did after the constitutional period and all provisions, which grew during Pahlavi's reign, Parliament played a role in them. They digressed from the aims of consultation and wanted to establish a law-by-the-sword parliament. Finally, they denied people their right to vote.
Imam Khomeini always remembered that period and that Reza Khan had suppressed all religious authorities. He said,
They prohibited all ceremonies of recital of the tragedies of Karbala and suppressed all clerics in such a severe way that they could not even appear in public places.
One of the most important political events at that time was the presence of Allied forces in Iran and the subsequent downfall of Reza Khan. Freedom of political parties and their activities were extended after Reza Khan's fall. Various political parties and currents were created, and a type of mental suffering dominated the country. At the time, Imam Khomeini was considered as one of the most accomplished scholars of the seminary school. He published his first political book in response to accusations made by some intellectuals against Shiism. This work, titled Discovery of Secrets, indicated his revolutionary spirit, revivalist insight, and new ideas for social and political concerns of the country. Moreover, the book expressed the depth of the Imam's knowledge and experience in the field of social and political events. Beginning in 1950, with the advent of the National Front led by Dr. Mossadegh and Ayatollah Kashani's presence in the Iranian political scene, a new horizon came into existence whose most important achievements were the nationalization of the oil industry and fracture of Iran's relations with Britain, Mossadegh's coming to power, and the Shah's flight from the country. But the bloody coup on August 18, 1953, masterminded by the CIA in collusion with some domestic elements, was a big setback for the Iranian nation. After that, Iranians endured 25 years of indescribable strangulation and despotism. 10 years after the 1953 coup, the revolt on June 4, 1963, led by Imam Khomeini, was the first and strongest blow to the foundation of Mohammad Reza Pahlavi's regime. In fact, this revolt expressed popular objection to the Bill of Provincial Councils, in which Islamic principles had been clearly violated.
The revolt was severely suppressed by the government's agents, and a large number of people were killed in various cities throughout the country, and Imam Khomeini was for a time placed under arrest. In 1964, the bill of enacting legal immunity for all Americans living in Iran was approved by the parliament. On October 25, 1964, Imam Khomeini delivered a speech against the bill and the ruling regime. The Imam was sent into exile by agents of the regime to Bursa, Turkey on November 3, 1964, after delivering this speech and publishing a declaration on its contents. Imam Khomeini stayed in Turkey for 1 year and was sent to Najaf, Iraq, where he lived for 13 years.
During these years, Imam Khomeini found the chance to gain more experience and deepen his relations with different classes of people. Several events happened in these years which made the conditions ripe for revolution. These included the people's increasing affinity for Imam Khomeini's guidance and their compliance to his teachings and declarations, the Shah's despotism and intolerance and restriction of individual and social freedoms, dissemination of Western culture and neglect of religious culture on the part of the government, advent of new movements in thought, such as those launched by Dr. Shariati and martyr Montahari. With the martyrdom of Imam Khomeini's eldest son, the process of the Islamic Revolution began, resulting in the triumph of the revolution on February 10, 1979, and the collapse of the Shah's dictatorial regime. The immigration of Imam Khomeini from Najaf to Paris in the heart of Western civilization in November 1978, when he was 78 years old, was a turning point in his life, which disclosed his revivalistic thoughts.
من دعاگوی شما هستم، من خدمتگزار شما هستم، من صلاح حال شما را میخوام.
Surely Imam Khomeini's 10-year leadership after the victory of the Islamic Revolution was the greatest period of his life. The Iranian nation was able to overcome many formidable events under the guidance of the great leader. Some of these events included the imposed 8-year war against Saddam's regime, various attempted coups and conspiracies, many cases of assassination by terrorist groups, some internal disputes, separatist movements in some parts of the country, and the alliance of the Eastern and Western superpowers against the Islamic Revolution.